The silence of the underworld was not an emptiness, but a presence. It was the quiet of deep earth, of polished stone, of finality accepted. Hades, lord of this realm, moved through its obsidian halls, a figure of shadow and stillness. His kingdom was a place of perfect, solemn order, where the whispers of the dead were softer than falling dust. Then a sound that did not belong, a crack, sharp as thunder, echoing from a distant vault. A tremor, slight but profound, ran through the foundations. And then light, a single, shocking shaft of gold, piercing the eternal gloom from a fissure high in the cavern's ceiling. It was a geological anomaly, a fault in the divine fabric, a rift never meant to be. Through it she fell, not with a scream, but with a gasp of pure surprise. A tumble of green linen and dark curls, she landed in a heap on the cold floor, the shaft of sunlight painting her in ethereal gold before the earth above sealed itself, leaving only the ghostly luminescence of the palace walls. The silence rushed back in, now charged, broken. Hades was before her in an instant, his form towering, his expression carved from granite. Intrusion was unheard of. Terror was the only expected response. "Who dares?" he began, his voice the grind of tectonic plates. Persephone pushed herself up, brushing grit from her arms. She did not cower. Her eyes, wide and the color of a sun-dappled forest, swept the vast, vaulted chamber, the smooth columns, the gentle, sourceless light, the profound, peaceful quiet. She looked not at the feared god, but at his domain. "It's so quiet here," she said, her voice clear, cutting the tension. She rose to her feet, ignoring his looming presence to turn a slow circle. "Not like the meadows, there it's always buzzing, growing, shouting. My mother, she makes it sing until your ears ring with it." She finally looked at him, her gaze curious, analytical. "Is all your realm like this?" Hades stood, disarmed, the script of dread and submission. "Lay in tatters, like what?" he asked, the sternness in his tone giving way to wary confusion. "Peaceful," she stated as if it were obvious. "Ordered, it feels complete." She took a step, her sandal whispering on the stone. "They call it a prison, but it doesn't feel like one, it feels like a conclusion." He stared, his weariness, a mantle worn for eons, feeling suddenly visible. No one had ever seen the dignity in his duty, only the terror. "It is the realm of the dead," he said, a simple, stark fact. "I know," Persephone replied, and to his further astonishment she smiled, a small, understanding thing. "And they are at rest. There's a kindness in that, isn't there? A different kind of care than forcing things to bloom forever." A silent understanding passed between them in that moment, not romantic, but profound. It was the recognition of one who governed life in endless, smothering abundance, seeing, for the first time, the solemn beauty in its end. And it was the recognition of a lonely ruler being seen not as a jailer, but as a steward. Then from far above, muffled by layers of rock and soil, came the distant, frantic sounds of a search, a goddess's voice sharp with panic calling a name, her name. Persephone's eyes flicked upward, then back to Hades. The awe in her face did not fade, but it was joined by a new, thoughtful resolve. The world above was calling. But for the first time, she had found a place that did not seek to drown her in its light. The silence that followed the echo of Demeter's voice was heavier than before, charged with a coming storm. Hades did not resume his throne. He remained standing, a pillar of obsidian stillness, his hands clasped behind his back. He watched the space where the rift had been, as if he could still see the ghost of sunlight. Persephone stood a few paces away, her back straight, her fingers laced tightly before her. She did not look at him, nor toward the sound of her name. She seemed to be listening to the deep, foundational quiet of his halls, measuring it against the tempest she knew was descending. It did not take long. The air in the great chamber grew thick, humid, and sweet with the cloying scent of forced blossoms and ripe grain. Pressure built, a palpable demand for growth and light that warred against the underworld's cool acceptance. Then, with a sound like tearing roots and snapping vines, reality parted not with a clean rift, but with a violent bloom. Demeter stood revealed, framed not by stone, but by a nimbus of furious golden light. Wheat and poppies sprang from the seamless marble at her feet, only to wither instantly to gray ash in the unreceptive air. Her face, usually the warm brown of fertile earth, was pale with rage and fear. "Daughter," the word was a command, an invocation. Her eyes, the color of a summer sky stretched thin, swept the chamber and fixed on Persephone. Relief and wrath battled in her gaze. Then she saw Hades. Her features contorted. "You." "Shadow robber, what have you done with her? Release her." Hades said nothing. He merely inclined his head, a minimal acknowledgement of her presence and her power. His expression was unreadable, the weary sternness back in place, but he made no move to stand between them. It was Persephone who moved. She did not run to her mother's open arms. She took a single, deliberate step forward, placing herself in the space between the two gods. The gesture was not protective of Hades, but declarative of herself. "Mother," she said, and her voice, though clear, held a new resonance. It was not the voice of a girl in a meadow. "He has done nothing to me. The earth opened, I fell. Do not speak his lies." Demeter's light flared, causing the shades along the distant walls to shrink back. "This is a place of theft and dust. It has no hold on you. Come away at once." Persephone did not flinch. "Is it a lie that I find peace here? That the endless, deafening cycle of your spring feels like a cage, too?" Me you weave life upon life, mother, and call it love, but it allows for no stillness, no choice, no end. She spread her hands, indicating the vast, solemn grandeur around them. Here there's respect, there's a dignity to this quiet you call desolation. Demeter stared as if her daughter spoke a foreign tongue. Dignity in this tomb, you are bewitched, the gloom has poisoned your mind. My mind is my own, Persephone countered, her tone firming. For the first time, it is truly my own. You never asked what I wanted, only what grew best in the sun you provided. The goddess of the harvest seemed to shrink for a moment, the wrath bleeding into something raw and wounded. I kept you safe, I gave you everything. You gave me everything but a door, Persephone whispered, and the truth of it hung colder than any underworld stone. It was then that Hades spoke. He did not address Demeter's fury. He turned his head slightly, his dark eyes resting on Persephone alone. His voice was low, formal, carrying in the hushed space without effort. The realm is orderly. It requires no false spring or coerced bloom, he said, each word measured. But it is perpetual, a single unchanging note. He paused, his gaze unwavering from her. You speak of cycles, of choice. I am the steward of an end, but an end need not be barren for all eternity. He took one step forward, not in threat, but in petition. He was a king, but in this moment he posed a question. Persephone, he said, and her name in his voice was not a possession, but an acknowledgement. You have seen the foundation of this world. Should you wish it, you could be its counterpoint, not a prisoner, but a queen, not a subject, but a partner. You would return to the light for a season to walk your own path, and for a season you would reign here with me by your own will. The proposal hung in the air, stark and revolutionary. It was not a negotiation with Demeter. It was an offer laid solely at Persephone's feet. Demeter's shock curdled into pure, incandescent fury. You would bargain for my child with pretty words. She is not a commodity to be divided between us like the year. No, Persephone said, and all eyes turned to her. The awe she had first felt was gone, replaced by a resolve as hard and clear as crystal. She looked at Hades, then at her trembling mother. He is not bargaining with you, he is asking me. She drew a deep breath, the air of the underworld filling her lungs, cool and decisive. And I am answering. The confrontation was over. Demeter's wrath remained, a tempest contained by sheer disbelief, but Persephone's will had become a new, unyielding geography in the room. The choice for good or ill had been made in the dark, and it belonged to her alone. The air still hummed with the aftershock of Demeter's departure, a fading resonance of outrage and wounded love. The cloying scent of forced blossoms lingered, a ghost in the cool, still air. Persephone stood where she had made her declaration, her shoulders squared, watching the space where her mother had vanished. The silence that returned was different now, not broken, but deepened, heavy with consequence. Hades observed her from a respectful distance. He did not speak, did not offer comfort or claim victory. He simply waited, a figure of shadow and patience, allowing the weight of her choice to settle upon her fully. After a long moment, Persephone turned from the empty air. Her expression was thoughtful, composed, but her eyes held the sheen of unshed tears, not of regret, but of a profound, painful severance. She met his gaze and gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. It was an acknowledgement of the new ground they stood upon. "Will you walk with me?" he asked, his voice low. It was not a command, but an invitation. "The banks of the Styx are clarifying." She accepted with another nod, and they left the great hall, descending through corridors of polished basalt. The silence between them was not uncomfortable, but observant. He led her to a wide, dark terrace that overlooked the river. The water was not water as she knew it. It was a slow, solemn current of memory and regret, its surface reflecting no light, swallowing all sound. The far shore was shrouded in mist, from which the faint, peaceful murmurs of countless souls could just be heard. They walked along the obsidian path, the hushed roar of the river a constant, gentle presence. It was Persephone who broke the quiet. "Fear you," she said, not as an accusation, but as an observation. "On the surface, your name is a whisper that stops laughter. They speak of your kingdom only as a place of punishment." Hades's pace did not falter. "It is easier to fear a finality than to understand its necessity. I am the keeper of the balance they spend their lives ignoring. Fear is the tribute paid by the willfully blind." "And loneliness?" she asked softly, glancing at his profile, stern and etched with an ancient weariness. "That your tribute as well," he stopped, looking out over the ink-black flow. "Loneliness is the mantle of office. To rule this realm is to stand apart even from one's own kind." He turned his head toward her. "You spoke of a cage of perpetual spring. I rule a sanctuary of perpetual autumn. It is a different solitude, but a solitude nonetheless." Persephone wrapped her arms around herself, not against cold, but against the echo of his words. "I was never alone. And yet I have never felt more seen than in the hour since I fell into your halls." She let out a breath, a small cloud in the still air. "My mother's love is a thicket. It shelters, but it also encloses. I was a cherished possession in a gilded garden. You have offered me a throne and a partnership." "The offer stands," he said, "but a throne here is not like a throne on Olympus. It is built on responsibility, not revelry, on the acceptance of ends, not the pursuit of pleasures." "I understand," she said, and she did. "Will you show me, not as a guest, but as one who would help bear that responsibility? Show me the heart of it." He considered her this young goddess of unfettered growth who saw dignity in his domain of quiet ends. Then he gestured, and the mists on the far shore of the Styx parted. They crossed not by boat, but by a bridge of dark, seamless stone that appeared at his will. On the other side, the air changed. It was softer, cooler, tinged with a faint, silvery haze. They entered the asphodel meadows. It was a vast, gentle plain where the souls of the ordinary dead wandered, not in joy or sorrow, but in a serene, dreamlike contentment. The gray grass whispered under a sky that held neither sun nor stars, only a perpetual, tranquil twilight. It was beautiful in its way, but it was a beauty of stillness, of memory fading gently into peace. Persephone walked among them, her green gown a startling note of vitality. The shades did not fear her, they drifted near, drawn by the life she carried. She watched them, her intelligent eyes missing nothing. "It is peaceful," she murmured, "but it is a peace of absence, a beautiful, final quiet." She turned to Hades. "But must finality mean an end to beauty's memory? What if they could remember the feel of grass, the scent of flowers, not as a torment of loss, but as a comfort?" Hades watched her, intrigued. "This is not a place for growing things. Nothing truly lives here." "Not lives," she agreed, kneeling to touch the gray soil. "But what if something remembered, not a forced, shouting spring, but a gentle echo of one? A garden of shades and silver, of plants that hold light within, not from above. A place where the beauty of the world they left is honored, not forgotten." She looked up at him, her vision painting the gray plain with invisible, luminous strokes. "You speak of finality, I speak of the cycle that makes finality meaningful. Even here there can be a gentle turning, a memory of growth to dignify the rest." He was silent for a long time, gazing at the meadows through her eyes. He saw not a criticism of his realm, but an insight into its potential completeness. "You would remake a corner of my world," he stated. "I would partner in its keeping," she corrected, standing. "You provide the foundation, the order, the respect. I could provide a testament, a garden in the meadows where endings are softened by the memory of beginnings." The pact formed then, not in a signed scroll or a shouted vow, but in the shared understanding that hung between them on that misty plain. It was sealed by mutual need, his for a perspective beyond eternal stillness, hers for a purpose beyond decorative existence. It was founded on a growing, quiet affection built not on passion, but on profound recognition. "Then let it be so," Hades said, the words a royal decree and a personal promise. "For a season you will return to the world of light to walk your own path, as you said. And for a season, reign here as queen of the underworld and bring your vision to these meadows, by your own will." "By my own will," Persephone echoed, her voice firm. They stood together in the asphodel meadows, the lord of finality and the goddess of cyclical life, and in the gray twilight the first seed of a new kind of balance was sown. It was a choice made in the dark, for the light and for the dignified shadows in between. The first season unfolded not as a conquest, but as a careful collaboration. Persephone did not storm the underworld with rampant, shouting life. She introduced it as a whisper, a gentle correction to the realm's perpetual twilight. Her first act was in the asphodel meadows. With Hades' silent permission, a gesture as significant as any decree, she knelt again in the gray soil. From the folds of her chiton she produced not seeds from the world above, but something she had cultivated in secret, a dusting of faintly luminous spores born of her own essence and the unique minerals of the deep earth. She breathed upon them and let them fall. Where they settled, a soft, silver moss began to spread, emitting a gentle, moonlight glow that did not chase away the twilight but deepened its tranquility. The wandering shades paused, drawn to the soft light. They did not touch it, but they remembered, in whatever way souls remember, the comfort of starlight. Hades observed from the edge of the meadow, a statue of obsidian stillness. He did not interfere. His stillness, once a wall, became the foundation upon which her subtle changes could take root. He provided the space, the unyielding order of his realm that gave her experiments a frame. When she spoke of needing a certain mineral for the veins of her ghostly plants, he would without a word have a small, raw piece of it appear on a work table in a quiet alcove she had claimed. It was his language of allowance, of support. She created gardens. Not the riotous, demanding beds of Demeter's making, but orderly. Plots among the asphodel, where silver-leafed herbs that glowed with a soft, internal bioluminescence grew in neat rows. They offered no fruit, no sustenance, but their scent was a memory of rain on dry earth, of crushed pine needles, of a distant, cool spring. Souls would drift through these gardens, and a subtle change would come over them, a slight straightening of translucent shoulders, a faint, peaceful smile. They were not tormented by the beauty, but comforted. It was a beauty that honored their end, a final, gentle gift to ease the transition from memory into pure peace. Hades learned to soften, though it would never be visible to an outside eye. It was in the way he began to walk the meadows with her at the end of each day, a silent patrol where her observations on the soul's reactions were met with his deep, considered nods. It was in the way his pronouncements to newly arrived shades, once stark and formidable, began to include a phrase she had suggested: "You are welcome." To the gardens, should you wish a moment of remembrance before your rest. Death remained a final transition, but under their joint reign it shed the last vestiges of terror, becoming a dignified and at times even beautiful homecoming. When the time came for her to ascend, the pact they had forged by the Styx demanded its due. She prepared not with the desperation of an escape, but with the deliberate care of a queen arranging affairs of state. In the chamber he had given her, now holding a vase of everlasting silver orchids, she faced him. "The balance must be kept," she said, her voice steady. "I will return to the light. I will walk my own path, see what has grown in my absence." Hades stood before her, his hands clasped behind his back. The weary sternness was in his face, but beneath it was a respect so deep it felt like a new facet of his being. "The realm will await its queen," he replied, the words a formal vow. "The gardens will keep their glow, and I will return," she promised, the words simple, binding, not out of obligation, because this is also my home. Her departure was not a dramatic exit. She walked to a designated, smooth portion of the palace wall, where a temporary, controlled aperture opened to the world above, a courtesy he now extended. She stepped through, and the earth sealed behind her. On the surface, Demeter, who had searched the barren world in a grief that turned to icy wrath, felt her daughter's emergence. But Persephone did not run into her arms. She stood, a goddess matured in the dark, and explained her pact, her choice, her duty. Demeter's relief was swallowed by a fresh, profound sorrow. In her grief, she withdrew her power. The relentless, smothering spring faltered. Leaves, for the first time, blazed with gold and crimson before letting go. The world grew cold, quiet, and still. It was not a punishment wrought by Hades and Persephone, but a consequence of Demeter's love and loss. The first autumn descended, followed by the deep, necessary sleep of the first winter, a time of rest the world had never known it needed. Below, Hades ruled alone once more, but the silence was different. The silver moss still glowed in the meadows. The memory gardens thrived, tended by grateful shades. His kingdom was remade, touched by a cyclical grace that did not disrupt its order, but completed it. His stillness held the space for her return, and she did return. When the allotted months passed, Persephone descended once more, not through a chaotic rift, but through the appointed gate. She brought with her the wisdom of the surface, a quieter, more resilient kind of vitality. Her return did not bring a shattering, explosive spring, but a spring born of wisdom, a slow, sure thaw, a resilient green pushing through knowing soil. It was a spring that understood winter and thus cherished the light all the more. In the sun-drenched world above, poets and storytellers, unable to fathom a goddess choosing the shadows, spun a tale of abduction of a stolen bride and a mother's wrath. They called it a tragedy, a myth of violation. But in the quiet, orderly halls beneath the earth, in the glowing silver gardens of Asphodel, a different truth was lived. It was the story of a rift that became a doorway, of a choice made in the dark, and of a kingdom and a partnership, reforged with mutual respect into something enduring, balanced, and whole.